There is over Whitehall one of those dark clouds that you see in cartoons, the doom cloud. And they're all busy worrying about the £2 petrol for a litre, you know. And Britons today are being advised to drive less. That's the message coming out of Whitehall. Not because the government has suddenly discovered environmental virtue, but because petrol prices may shortly resemble the GDP of a small Balkan country. Experts are warning that fuel could hit £2 a litre thanks to the latest Middle East crisis, which has sent oil markets into what traders technically refer to as a complete wobble, spiralling fast, and only in one direction, which is at the moment upwards. Saudi Arabia, the largest oil supplier, is reportedly curbing output at two major fields. Iran has effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow little shipping lane through which a fifth of all the world's oil supply travels. And when 1/5 of the world's oil supply suddenly finds itself stuck with between a geopolitical rock and a tyrannical hard place, markets tend to react with all the calm and rationality of a toddler who's just lost their biscuit. Brent crude has now surged above the $100 barrel market. Some analysts warn it will reach $150. As if the crisis carries on as long as they think it might do. Weeks, not months, though. For British motorists, though, this is potentially bad news. It means a potential new record, in fact, for petrol prices. The previous peak was 191.4 during the Ukraine energy shock in 2022. £2 is now firmly in sight and possibly above. The AA and RAC, in the sort of advice usually given during wartime rationing, are encouraging drivers to cut non-essential journeys and adopt what might be politely called gentler driving habits, i.e. drive a little bit slower. Don't accelerate so hard, brake gently, that sort of thing. Don't pop out for milk, wait until you need bread as well, kind of thing. Only go shopping, do big shops, don't go and do piecemeal shopping. Meanwhile, though, the FTSE 100 has reacted to the situation with equal enthusiasm, only not going upwards, but going in the complete opposite direction of downwards and crashing. The market dropped more than 100 points and wiped out more than a month of gains in just 2 days. And, of course, investors have suddenly remembered that wars in the Middle East and global energy markets tend not to mix very well. Hovering over all of this, like the spectre of the feast, is something Britain remembers rather vividly, and that is another cost of living crisis. Which brings us neatly to Keir Starmer. Now, he's been touring all the broadcast studios trying to pitch his waffle and reassure the nation that everything is absolutely fine as the house is burning down. And it's not absolutely fine. In fact, it's awful. It's terrible, and it's not going to get better, is it? He was on a community centre visit in London. He went this morning, first thing. And the PM insisted that the British economy is, in his own words now, more resilient than it was in 2022, which we know is absolute bollocks. Is he telling these lies in the hope that he believes them? The resilience, we are told, comes from careful economic stewardship and a great deal of government monitoring. Oh, they really do believe the bullshit they're selling, don't they? There's quite a lot of monitoring, in fact. So much monitoring that if monitoring alone could power the economy, Britain would now be the Saudi Arabia of spreadsheets. Starmer did concede, however, that the longer the war continues, the more likely it is to affect the economy, which is a refreshingly honest way, I think, of saying if the oil shock continues, the cost of everything is going to go up way beyond what most people can afford. Again. Meanwhile, of course, he's trying to deal with that slightly awkward diplomatic subject, his failure to support Donald Trump. He's had to make the phone call, bend the knee, offer a cheek, kiss the cheek. And that was obviously because of the failure to launch, shall we say, of not allowing America to use our bases. First time they talked in 8 days. Now, Trump, for his part, basically has dismissed the soaring oil price as a small price to pay for dealing with Tehran, which is reassuring, unless you happen to be the one paying £2 a litre at the petrol pumps. But meanwhile, the global oil market is behaving exactly as you would expect in the Middle Eastern conflict. Tankers are stacking up outside the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has threatened to set ablaze any Western tanker attempting to pass through, and insurance companies are reacting by quietly deciding that perhaps sending ship into a war zone is not the most attractive business model. Which means fewer tankers, meaning fewer oil, which means less supply, which means higher prices. Economics sadly remains stubbornly obedient to the laws of supply and demand and does not listen to the desires of politicians. And it's always never been the case. When politics meets economics, economics always wins. But, of course, the consequences do not stop at the petrol pump. Higher oil prices feed directly into energy bills, transport costs, food prices, inflation, and so forth, which brings us rather neatly, I think, to the Bank of England, which now, where there were hopes of cutting interest rates, looks like it may actually have to put them up. Basically, if inflation surges, they'll have to keep the interest rates high. Mortgages will remain expensive. The government's own borrowing costs, already climbing, will rise even further. And indeed, interest rates on 10-year government bonds have jumped sharply since the crisis began. And Britain, of course, as ever, enters the situation with what economists politely describe as limited fiscal headroom, which is a translation for "we ain't got no money." The Chancellor is now attending emergency G7 discussions about releasing strategic oil reserves to calm markets, which may help for a week. But analysts warn if the conflict deepens, the global economy will be heading for something rather more serious than expensive petrol. The FTSE has already lost around 8% this week. Oil has surged, gas prices are rising. Britain's own gas storage levels are not exactly abundant. And in the worst case scenario, the UK has got 2 days' worth of stored gas supply, which in Whitehall terms usually means someone is hoping the situation improves before anyone ever notices. So here we are. Oil surging, market sliding, pound rubbish, interest rates staying high, motorists are being advised to drive like Miss Daisy. And in short, the global economy is going to be entering an energy shock. And if oil really does reach $150 a barrel or even $200 a barrel, then sort of £2 or £3 a litre for petrol may be the least of Britain's worries. Because once energy prices explode, everything else will follow, usually at speed and usually at great cost. Because unlike the nation's motorists, we all need to eat. It could be that people stop going to work. Can't afford to go in, boss. You have to pay me more. Well done. Now, let's see if the Chancellor will reduce taxation on oil. Probably not. Let's see if Miliband will say, oh, okay, let's open up the oil fields and pump more. Probably not. It's a bugger, isn't it, when you get idealists filled with their dogmatic passion. Let me know what you think. Thanks a lot. Bye.